Hi, Alona. How are you doing?
Hi, hi guys. I'm just what am I doing? I'm just putting out a tweet. 1 second. Thank you for having me, and I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Pleasure to have you here. How's your crazy Christmas rush going?
Oh, I don't think I've got anything, anything exciting happening at the moment. So there's no Christmas rush as such. But
That's
London is
good.
London
That's
is
good.
getting festive.
Yeah, cool.
What about you?
Just the usual, like everyone's trying to get things finished at work and lots of people trying to catch up before the end of the year, and it's probably a very different kind of environment here because it's the start of summer, so everyone's having barbecues and um
What is it that you do for your job?
I'm a scientist. I work at a biotech company.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so everyone's got projects they're trying to finish or tie up before they go away at the end of the year, but it's it's the same every year. Everyone's like overestimates how much they can get done in the year.
It's always like that. One
Yeah.
second, I'm still drafting the tweet. I was sure for some reason that the space was at like half, so like in 2 hours basically.
Um,
And so I just freaked out. I saw it by accident, by
we
accident
used
that
to
you were
do it.
about to start.
We used to do it later, but we got a lot more people last time when it was earlier, so we decided to change it.
That makes sense. 1 second, I'll just grab a glass of
No
water then.
worries. Quigno, how are you doing?
Good, good, good. I didn't necessarily want to speak. I was just waving hello to everybody and Helena.
Oh, right. I see. I see.
I don't have
We like
anything
it
worth
when you
saying.
speak, though. Yes, you do. Uh, um, Yeah, thanks to everyone who was tweeting that request from Max as well. That was great. I saw that it got a lot of traction yesterday. It's probably through many, many other people as well as us, but it was good to get involved.
Yeah, I saw like I asked Regina to retweet it in Estonian. She did it today, so you can
Oh,
find it
cool.
like in the quote tweets. Also, our other friend from Finland, she retweeted in Finnish yesterday.
Nice. Nice. So, should we start with an update?
I'm actually right
Yes, we love
now looking
updates.
on the numbers. 1 second.
Numbers. Okay. Well, I'll tell you about some other stuff. We've got some very cool partnerships coming up, which I haven't signed the ink on, so I'm not going to reveal them. But potentially some very cool partnerships happening with organizations who have either been doing a similar thing or the same thing as us. And we are joining forces. And they are both nonprofits. So, what's really nice about it is they come along to you and say, hey, we're doing something similar. Why don't we team up instead of being competitive, which is really nice compared to the commercial world. But learning a lot from these people who have been doing what we're trying to do for a long time and can tell us exactly what to do and what not to do and save us from making a lot of mistakes. So it's going to be really exciting to announce some of those partnerships coming up soon. One of them is actually a program with a university in Sumi. So I'm very excited about that because
And
we'll
are
have
they
some.
in any way different from Balakon?
Yeah, so one is an organization that's based in the States and it is not specifically for Ukrainians at all. It's just about matching up mentors with students who need extra tutoring. But they have all of the infrastructure worked out in a very similar way to what we need and what would have taken us years to build. And so they're going to let us use their platform to, set up profiles for mentors and students and allow us to match much more easily and keep track of how many we have, how many lessons have happened, and even use their platform for the meetings as well. So you won't get cut off after 40 minutes if you're using Zoom, which is going to be great.
That's gonna save so much time,
I
honestly.
know.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool. How did you come across them?
They came, well, they they were introduced to me by someone who started Tutors for Ukraine, which is the other organization that we are going to, I'll just say it, we're going to merge with them um, because, and they basically set up in the US to help Ukrainians who had emigrated there with English. And through his contacts, he introduced me to this platform that had all of the infrastructure set up. So it's been an exciting couple of weeks of meetings with both of them. And we're going to test out the system next week with just me and my students, and then roll it out to a bigger group, work out all the kinks, and then implement it around the whole of Balakoon. So it's exciting.
It sounds great, honestly.
And what's really cool is that we're going to have a lot of, we'll be able to get information much more easily about things like how many we have, how many are waiting, how many lessons we've done. So if we ever want to apply for a grant or partner with someone, we can show them what we are as an organization. So we're evolving from a Telegram chat group to a real organization, which is very exciting.
I feel like
Did you have
all
the
good
numbers ready?
things start from a Telegram chat.
Yeah, and some bad things too.
Exactly.
Tatiana, did you have some numbers for us yet?
Yep. So as of today, we have 131 matches.
Woohoo!
And actually, this week we took one more member of Armed Forces of Ukraine, and he's already in contact with the mentor.
Hmm.
So, and for the students who are still on the wait list, we have 74.
Okay, that's coming down. That's good.
Tatiana, is that in addition to the one that I picked up? So
Yep,
another member of.
yep,
Ooh,
yeah.
nice.
It's another guy. I met him through the Ukrainian Twitter Spaces, and one on the one Twitter space, Ukrainian Twitter space, we were talking about English, and told them about our project, and he like reached out to me. So I took him to our program, and I already found him a tutor from Brazil.
Cool.
Yeah, this is very cool. I was super excited about that.
Do I know
Um,
who that is?
The tutor or the
The
member?
Ukrainian guy.
You saw him, but he's not in our chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be in our chat, I guess. And have you had any kind of like feedback from the people who are already, um, who have had like a few tutoring sessions?
yeah, the feedback's been really good. Sorry, you go ahead, Tatiana.
Oh yeah, I have feedback from the students mostly, but from the mentors as well, and it looks like everything is going pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even like on Instagram, I remember when I was posting the quote from Lachlan that Quigner helped us to put in a program as a mentor. So his mentee was commenting on that. Oh my God, like it's my tutor. I'm so happy. I'm so glad that he's like teaching me English. And
Yeah.
his mentee is actually the volunteer in Ukraine.
Oh, is this someone that you met, Quignal, when you were over there?
Yes, so this was, I guess, one of the first Balakun in-person interviews. So yeah, it was one of the volunteers I met in Lviv, and I was spreading the
Cool.
word and managed to snag one. So I'm glad his mentee is like so enthusiastic as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's always great to pick up new good people.
Yeah, cool. Quignal, I've been meaning to ask you. I'm going to do a podcast at some point on how we make our program better for people in the army, and I wanted to get you on as a guest. but I'll give you details about that later.
Yeah, let's coordinate on the side.
Yeah.
And then
Just to
another
warn you.
not so secret. I'll make an announcement later, but I will be back in Ukraine
Ooh,
in the not far future. So
cool.
more on that too.
You couldn't stay away, huh?
Yeah, once you go, you catch that bug.
Yeah, nice. Um, Alona, so what's been happening in your world?
Oh, uh, quite a lot. Where do you even start? Um, I guess I should like introduce myself maybe a little bit,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
in case someone doesn't know me. So my name is Alona. I am I'm Ukrainian and I live in London. I've lived here for about like the last 10 years. But I'm very I'm very connected to Ukraine. I've always have been, and so when the full scale invasion began, I set up this community that's called Ukraine DAO, and we do a lot of different kinds of work. We've made the biggest donation to come back alive in their history, for example. We help them a lot with translations, with like media. Kind of try to, I guess, promote, advocate for Ukraine, and maintain a community where Ukrainians feel safe. Which is not always it's not always the case for Ukrainians. Not all communities are equally Ukraine friendly, unfortunately. And so that's been pretty much all I've been focusing on. And Tatiana has been of huge help. I don't know how I would navigate everything that's happening in Ukraine's info space without her knowledge. So that's basically how we met.
Yeah, I just watch too many news from Ukraine, more than from
He
United
really
States.
does,
And
yeah.
and the thing is, I started following everything what's going on in Ukraine when I moved from Ukraine. So since 2011, I kinda in the I know what's going on and who's who.
But like, are you even like nearly as aware about American politics?
I do a little bit because I mostly give it to my husband because he's really good in that. So I explain him about Ukraine if he has some questions, and he explains me things about American politics. So we're working like that. So it's really helpful. Like if I have questions about like what's going on, why it's going on like that in the United States, he always telling me with like, okay, so a couple years ago it was this and that, and that's why it's happening right now. So this is really
And do
helpful for me
you
to
do you usually
understand.
like agree in terms of like your political views?
Pretty much yes. Not when he voted for Trump, but and after that, yeah, we agree because I remember when the last election, he was, and it's actually about media literacy as well, because he was watching a lot of like weird YouTube channels, and at one time I told you that we shared our premium account of YouTube, and sometimes I'm checking up what his subscriptions are just to know where the thing's coming from.
Like a parental control,
Kind of, yeah.
spousal control.
Like for example, it was like this pretty good uh, like a
That's to my friend
podcast like to,
Tanya.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll be back
Yeah.
in 5 minutes. I'm just like giving Sasha to my friend, so she's gonna babysit him for a couple of days. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. Super sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So it was this YouTube channel. It still is. It's called Breaking Points. And when the full-scale invasion happened, I was shocked about what they were saying there. And I was like, I don't think you should watch it if they're so bad about what's actually going on in Ukraine. Like, I'm not sure I will trust them about their judgment about United States.
Mm. Yeah, it's just so much information out there. I think that's one of the reasons I started talking to people in Ukraine was that there was so much conflicting information at the start about what was going on that I just wanted to find out from someone who was actually there, which is how this all started, really.
Well, this is the thing that like a lot of people in who didn't know a lot about Ukraine till the 2022, they
Mm,
don't understand a lot of context. They don't understand Russia. Even if they were thinking they do understand it, they actually not. Because
mm-hmm,
in there was like one of the covers that I'm um heard from this YouTube channel. It was about this nonsense that Putin invaded Ukraine because of the NATO, and I was laughing like how like where is coming from? And one
mm-hmm.
time they actually invited Oliver Stone as their expert on Ukraine, and it was the last thing for me to like stop watching this thing.
The last straw, yeah.
Yeah, you know who's Oliver Stone is, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, welcome to everyone who's joined. We have Alona here today, who's just handing off her baby to somebody else. But if anyone wants to be a speaker, please feel free um, to request to be a
Well, I've
speaker
got a
to ask
question for
questions.
everyone. In the meantime, I've got a question whilst I'm handing over Sasha. What misconceptions about Ukraine did you have before the full-scale invasion began?
Good question. I did a whole podcast on this. um, I think my biggest I didn't have a lot of misconceptions. I just didn't know very much about about Ukraine. Um, does anyone else want to answer this question?
Unfortunately, I think I'm just going to corroborate with you. So we don't have
Yeah.
many voices of dissent. I mean, I knew what Russia was. I had a good idea of what Russia was and is. So, kind of like you, I didn't have any misconceptions about Ukraine. I knew basically what was going on because of the way they've been operating since Russia is Russia. So, yeah.
Yeah. I my only as a child we played a game called Carmen San Diego, which is probably going to tell you how old I am. But it's like a detective game where you go around solving crimes in different places, and there was a point where you're in Kiev, but I think they would have called it Kiev in the game because it was made in the 90s. But that was the only thing I really knew about Ukraine as a child, and otherwise it didn't really come into my info space until 2014. And the one of the things that struck me about the Maidan Revolution was just how long it went on for, because we have our protests here in New Zealand sometimes. They usually last a day and then we go home. And just like seeing these people who were coming out every day for over a month, it was really, yeah, quite, and the force with which they were greeted as well. It was really shocking to see.
Well, I don't think that I need to answer to this question.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we'll see if somebody have questions for Alona and doesn't want to speak, just drop it in the comments.
Hmm.
Also, as you see, the space is recording, and also we will put it on our YouTube and our podcast platform as well for people to listen.
Hmm. I just finished editing my second podcast with Veet, by the way. Everyone should look at it when I put it up. It's good. It's about startups from Ukraine. It's much more uplifting than last time.
Startups that should be good. When you're gonna do you have a timeline of when you're gonna drop it?
Hopefully in a few hours. I just
Ooh,
need
okay.
we just need to re-record the ending because we ended a little bit abruptly. It's really nice though. You can go back and like remove all of your ums and ahs and I
Although
love it.
some of them lead to natural sounding conversations, so you gotta leave a few in there.
I leave a few in there, but I love to be able to remove like my stupid giggle that I do sometimes when I'm nervous. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I saw in in a community that I'm part of something like 70% of Ukrainians under the age of 40 like want to be entrepreneurs or something like that. So
Yeah.
I could definitely see how like the startup is going to be and will be such an important part of like the young working class that's going to be.
Yeah, it's wild. There were so many that I didn't even know were Ukrainian, and I'd heard of them. Um, and but yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. You should listen to the podcast because Veet did a really good job researching as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually like reminding me when I was like in school and university, my stepdad was telling me all the time that like, well, you need to figure out what do you want to do. Like, you're not going to work in some job, you have to create jobs. Like, think about that. And still, like,
Mm.
I will talk with him on the phone, and he's asking like, so do you have some ideas? Like, what business you're opening? Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. But it seems like the environment is really good there as well for people to start, which is great.
I see like Alona has some connections issue or something. I will try to get her back.
Cool, cool. Quignal, will you be going back to the same city, to Lviv?
Yeah, I mean Lviv is like a good hub. I think I might go to Kiev. It really depends on my schedule. Once again, nothing set in stone, but I'm trying to be there for the new year, so just coordinating.
Sorry, it was me.
Oops. Anyway, yeah, mostly Lviv. I might go to Kiev. We'll see. We'll just see how the logistics pan out.
Cool. Welcome to our new speaker. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. My name
Hi,
is Tas.
welcome.
What do you wanted to ask me?
Just welcome. Do you have any questions for us, or are you just joining in?
Oh yeah, I just joined. Just curious, where are you all guys from, and
Oh,
what's the topic?
cool. Well, I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. It's Sunday morning for me, and we started off as a Telegram group chat, and now we are almost a real organization that joins fluent
I'm back,
English
by the way. I'm
speakers.
sorry if I'm interrupting someone,
No, no,
but
that's
I'm
all
back.
right.
Hi, Stas.
Hey,
Hello, привіт. Привіт.
привіт.
Рада тебе бачити. Дякую, що долучився.
Дякую. If
I
if
was
if your topic was about, I heard about middle age for Ukrainian like workers, yeah, or just average people, and it's above 40, and it put me in emotions how far we are what we had at least 11 years ago. Okay, we had Yanukovych. Yeah, I know about this shit, but like I remember I was student at that time before the first Russian invasion, and we had like projects about how to plant grass on the top of our buildings in cities and stuff like from a different world what we have right now. Many positive things, zeros had generally positive vibe. People didn't think about the wars and think about the future. and we were living in this culture, post Cold War culture, with Matrix, with Terminator, with everything, Lord of the Rings, and Ukraine was a part of this culture, like some kind of inspiring world, and I was a student at that time. So we in 2014 generally looked on the different side of the world, and what is dying and funerals and crying and separated country when two superpowers could not like understand the proportion how they separate Ukraine, because Ukraine generally was pro-European. We have in 2020 we had Eurovision, and in Donetsk it was the same kind, like in Lviv or like in Poland. But for me, it seems like Western superpower. Okay, I know I sound like a post-Soviet person who think in conspirological levels, but for me, it's like they do not want, they never wanted to invest in Ukraine like they did in other Eastern European countries like Poland or Czech Republic. They think on us like on a buffer between them and Russia. Didn't want to um, have any problems with Russia, so it was such an easy way to just separate this country. At first, politically, like we support pro-European politics, and Russians support Yanukovych and pro-Russian politics, and we some kind of make a deal with them. So they in compare with even Poland, they didn't have resources or just didn't want to invest to Ukraine in general fully. That's the reason why we have right now what we have. That's the reason why we had different political parties, including pro-Russian, when it was not in Ukraine. Yeah, we have many people who were post-Soviets, but they were pro-Ukrainian in 2091 when Ukraine got independence. And we didn't have like Donbass region separately or everything like we can maybe think about with with Balkan conflict when some Albanians, Kosovo, didn't want to be part of Serbia. Here we had generally monopolitical nation, and when Ukraine could not be integrated to European Union and to NATO. Yeah, I know that Ukraine didn't want to go to NATO. That's true. That's part of our responsibility. But at the same time, NATO didn't want to include Ukraine in it fully. I'm not ready even yet, which means that it allowed Russia to get control on a part of the country because it's like, empty space. They invested on the place where West was weak. Yeah.
It's
Sorry
an
for this.
interesting. No, it's an interesting point that you bring up. And why do you think that, like, Western countries treated us specifically like that? Do you think they like singled us out?
I think they do not have resources or do not want
Come
to
on.
risk.
Of course, they do have resources. They have plenty of resources.
Then they do not. Then they do not have any kind of explanation why they didn't want to like help fully. Just little bit they help, but after like right now, yeah, we know that like Westerns are tired from war in Ukraine. How they can be tired? in the conditions what they have, and we do not have. Their flights are flying. They go to music festivals. What kind of tiring they have? Come on.
It's something that I've thought about it a lot, and I couldn't understand. Like in the beginning, especially like since the full-scale invasion began, I've been talking a lot to foreigners about Ukraine, and I've noticed how differently they treat Russians and Russians' so-called problems compared to like Ukrainians and the very real problems and suffering of Ukrainians these days. And I've come to realize, and I'm not claiming this is the absolute truth, but this is just my impression, is that if you look at the education system in Western Europe, and even if you like look at let's say in Germany, right, you look at their textbooks, you will see in their textbooks the way Russia is presented as a as kind of a victim, right? So Germans, they grow up thinking they owe something to Russia, right? They think that, oh, they should feel guilty um, about how they treated Russians during World War II. And Ukraine in this whole framework is just non-existent, right? So they basically grow up with Ukraine not being like a subject, in the worldview. And so for that like partially for that reason, um, so Russia exports its so-called culture. Like I feel like this cultural aspect is very crucial, and that's something that Ukraine has not been able to do on the same scale. First of all, because Ukraine is not an empire, it hasn't been an empire, and also because of how much the Ukrainian creative elites have suffered historically at the hands of Russians again. And so the Ukrainian cultural export is not as intense, it's not as well financed, and it's not, like, most tragically, it's not as well like lobbied, right? So Russians will put, they'll spread the tentacles everywhere, and they try to like infiltrate every possible like media everywhere, like everything they can in the cultural sphere abroad. So we've obviously not been able to do the same thing, and it's not our fault. And so I feel like this kind of cultural diplomacy aspect, where Russia creates this image of itself as if it's like a cultured country, so that image is completely fake, and it has nothing to do with what Russia is actually like. But it doesn't, at the end, all that matters is the impression in the Westerners' minds. And so they think that Russia is some kind of great, great country with like very rich traditions, very mysterious. And Ukraine, they just don't know anything about our culture very often, right? And so I feel like that's also is something that like gets in the way of us being treated the same way. But also, like, last thing I'll say on this, I speak sometimes to Tuma Silves, who is Estonia's former president, and he tells me how like he was never treated like equal. But he's very, like, it's not a secret, he's very outspoken about it, but he shares about how he was never treated as an equal human being by his like German and French colleagues, and so sometimes when Westerners are mean to me about Ukraine, I think, oh, it's because I'm Ukrainian, it's because I'm a woman or whatever. But sometimes it's just like being kind of anything that's like to the east of Germany, like not always they treat people from like Eastern Europe, um, with the equal dignity, unfortunately. And that's not like, I'm not throwing shade at Germany, even though I do it very often. But yeah, and so I've come to realize that there is just like so much there is so many like different factors at play that basically define why a lot of Westerners are so like unconsciously Russophilic, so they don't even realize how Russophilic they are, but they perceive Russia's like Russians' problems as much more important, right? So we hear all this talk about like Navalny being in prison, and nobody, barely anybody ever asks the question, why should we care? You know, it's literally a Nazi who was like rejoicing at like Ukrainian military being killed. Like, I'm sorry, but like, why should we be concerned about his fate? But you know, Russians know how to exploit like the weaknesses and the soft spots in the Westerners' minds, which is unfortunate. But the only thing you can do is kind of engaging with the people who are open to you, to the, you know, with the people who are able to listen at least.
Yeah, I definitely agree that they have this deep background, and they look on a war and any other problems on the East, like from their background, and they probably have some like pictures in their imagination when someone said mysterious Russian soul. They probably will get some pictures from Dostoevsky or everything, and based on that, they in society behave like we do not want them. Okay, but anyway, I think only besides the background we have to like think about responsibility in Europe, because right now I feel like seems like most of security questions are put to Ukrainians. You guys fighting, you have forced mobilization, you all probably will be injured or dead, and what have other countries instead? They what we joke in Ukrainian context, like fighting on a financial front line, financial or economic front line for Polish people or for Germans. German Marine may be chilling right now in bar when in Ukraine nerds are scary, deadly. Tomorrow they will be even you know this discussion maybe to low the age for mobilization in Ukraine from 27 to 25. So previously students, let's look like Ukrainian student. He finished his study and he will go to a front line. And German Marine or Swedish Marine or any other soldier in Europe, he will stay at home, go to bar, but on the east side of Europe, the student will fight for both him and himself. And this picture is so ugly. Yeah.
Actually, what you just described, it
Which
reminds
picture?
me.
Sorry.
Okay.
Forced mobilization for Ukraine and no mobilization for other European nations. And it's like generally can
Yeah.
describe like that.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's unfair. It's very unfair. And like as a civilian person, you always feel very guilty because it's like there is, I don't know, there is like a huge contrast between what our military have to go through and not just like ours, just people in Europe who like kind of get to go about their daily life and it feels like sometimes it feels like they just like don't understand how close the war is to them, and they probably definitely don't, because in the past, like even after Russia invaded in 2014, right? You still like I still couldn't comprehend the scale of it and how bad it was going to get, um, until it did, right? But it would be hard for me to imagine it until it happened. And so, like, unless until you start experiencing it, it just feels like this is not real, and it feels like the war is just happening somewhere away. And so it's just not going to happen to you because you're just one of those lucky people who are just kind of protected from that somehow. And then you find out that you're not. And I remember when I was a kid, I always thought that, like, why do we even need an army? I was like, we are surrounded with friends. Like, who's going to be attacking us? Well, that was like, very little. And um, in my childhood, like, you couldn't think of Ukraine being invaded. I don't know, maybe other Ukrainians here will object, but it just didn't cross my mind that it was going to happen. And so it was a huge shock.
Sorry for interrupt. Yeah, it was the same, but it was like a part of our general culture. We grow with you. We grow on the movies, which told that it's like it's wrong. War is wrong. We should not have war, and that's why we should like keep calm, and everyone will not war to probably if they grow in the same on the same movies, on the same literature. But yeah, we should be flexible. Sorry really for interrupt. Don't want to break you. Um, um, I want you to continue. But if we quickly switch to okay, danger is here. As quick as we understand this, as quick maybe many people will be alive and not injured. So this time to react, it costs blood and people. Everything is okay that we in the past think like we don't need an army, huge army. That's okay. But if the danger appear, people who didn't worry about it, they quickly should react. For instance, if you relax at home and sleeping, it's okay that you are sleeping. But if you hear the fire burning, you will probably have to quickly react as well. Sorry, I am repeating.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And so, like, I guess my point was that people in Europe should, and just like in the West in general, they need to understand that if Ukraine fell, then they would be next, and Ukraine would not be there anymore to protect them, because right now we are kind of defending everybody else from that era, and especially the Russophilic people, the ones who feel sorry for Russians, they need to appreciate the fact that Russians are not going to spare them. They don't care what you think of them, or whether you like them or whether you dislike them. They're just going to kill you regardless. And so I guess that's something that people who feel very self-righteous about, they tell Ukrainians, oh, like, you should not be hateful. Hate is never the answer, and so on. They just don't know Russians well enough, honestly. So I always say this to people, like, if you don't hate Russians, you just don't know them well enough. And yeah, something that I've seen a lot from foreigners. And I'm only saying this, like, to help people who are not Ukrainian maybe understand us a little bit better. Um, I've seen it a lot that they find us like really intense, and like too emotional, or like even too hateful, which is strange to me, but still. Um, And sometimes, like, when they argue with us, they argue like in good faith, so they think that they are being righteous, right, and that they are on the right side of things, but they forget that they're not going through the same trauma, right? And to them, it's just like a Twitter argument, whereas to Ukrainians, it's like an existential fight. And so, yeah, Ukrainians, I guess, sometimes just need to like to be heard, and I think that's one of the benefits of this project, that we are that this is hosting the space tonight, is that it creates an opportunity for Ukrainians to be heard, right? Because the better English they can speak, the more they can express themselves to the world. I cannot imagine what I would be like without if I couldn't speak English. Like, it would limit my world a lot. It would limit what could happen to me in life in a good way, by a lot. So it's super valuable, the work that you guys are doing.
I just wanted to pick up on one of the things that you said a little bit earlier. One of our mentors mentioned when I was asking people about their perceptions of Ukraine before the start of the invasion or before 2014. And he's a history teacher, and he noticed that, he said, looking back on it, all the history that was taught, he's from England, all the history that he learned or taught was told from the perspective of Russia, and there was very little or no mention of Ukraine, almost at all. And as Quignor and I both said at the start, it's kind of it's incredible to me that this is the biggest country in Europe, and yet we had no idea about so many things about Ukrainian culture. I know some history of France, Germany, Italy, all of these countries, but I didn't know anything about Ukraine, and that's because all of the history has been told from the Russian perspective, and I think that that's one of the reasons why this situation has occurred with people in the West not knowing anything about Ukraine until now, and it's a huge cost to change those perspectives, but they are changing.
I think, and to kind of build onto that too, it's good to hear that coming from an English teacher or not a history teacher in England. But Alona was on a space a couple weeks ago that I was on too with some members of the Georgian Legion, and one of the topics we were talking about is Russia is not the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had such a huge, big, influence in the history of the last 100 years. And when it collapsed, the narrative just kind of shifted that, like, okay, the Soviet Union, well, now it's the Russian Federation. And history books just kind of wrote to reflect that, like, okay, what was going on? Okay, well, over there it's the Soviet Union, and then it became Russia. But history overlooks all the other countries that were occupied by the Soviets, to put it the way that it actually is. They were occupied by the Soviets. And with that collapse, you have Ukraine, you have Belarus, you have all the Central Asian countries. They don't get the narrative that Russian gets, that, post-Soviet Russia gets in the history that we teach our young people. And it's over 30 years now, as that gets further and further, and it becomes 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, if we're not building the narratives of Ukraine and all these other countries, if those aren't becoming part of our history, we don't want to lose them. We don't want to lose those voices. So a lot of it's re-education. A lot of it has to be teaching people, like, this misery that Russia exports. Like Alona was saying, they export this misery. The Germans feel bad for the Russians for all the things that happen. Well, a lot of Ukrainians died in that war too. So we can't forget the other voices. We can't just give Russia this mantle that they took for themselves by occupying the seat at the UN. Like, we just have to keep fighting that. It's basically just misinformation, and it makes useful idiots.
Yeah, I agree. And as we talked about it, it's opened the floodgates to learning about the same sort of impact on other countries like Georgia and Moldova. Yeah, I didn't know anything about their relationship with Russia before the beginning of the invasion either. But people are becoming a lot more aware about these things. I know it's a little late, but it is changing.
To be honest, like I didn't know much myself about, for example, what Russians did in Georgia before Putin was around, you know. And it's once you learn a little bit about that, it kind of opens your eyes about, and you can then open other people's eyes on how stupid is the phrase Putin's war, you know, because it's just it just like it has no substance to it. Like, yes, this war may have been like initiated by Putin, but he's not an anomaly in the society, right? He is like more of this is the natural product of what their society is like. And so they all, you know, all of them as well, I don't know, I even struggle to call them a society at this point, but like collectively, they are all responsible for what's happening. And they've not become like this all of a sudden, you know. They've always have been like this, the way they are right now. And so some people like to be like nostalgic about how Russia used to be in the past, like not that long ago, but it's just because they did not get experience, they didn't get to experience the horrors that Russians were committing at that time somewhere else. So yeah, I guess like my own ignorance, like it took for this war to happen for me to like open my eyes on and like start connecting more with other countries that suffered from Russia. And it's crazy how similar the stories are, like what they do in different countries. It just like it's like a copy pasted genocide, you know, so to speak. They just completely replicate the violence everywhere they go.
I think the common thing what in other societies look similar to our context with Russia is conspirological ideas, and people who are fans of such conspirological ideas, you know, how it's called, a QAnon, yeah, or uh, fans of flat Earth. That the hell what we had even before the war with some people, marginals in Kharkiv, in Crimea. You can in Crimea met with old person who said like we have to send nukes to Washington, and you listen to him and think, oh, okay, yeah, maybe he's mad. That's what we know from our eastern neighbor, that he's some kind of mad, but after some time you realize that it's not just okay, you can ignore him because he messaged to you from different ways, from mad people on the streets or from news, from the TV. Yeah, we are like that, we are like that. Do not forget, we are mad, but we are not far from you. That's why like if you see any marginal mad person, citizen, crazy man person in your city, that's kind of madness what we have. We do not understand why they separate the world, want to influence, push it so hard, but for instance, my grandpa, he's a little bit like that. He grow up. Maybe Germans know it well. You know this movie Goodbye Lenin? Have anyone seen it?
I've
I
heard of it,
haven't.
but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, about this woman. Do not want to spoil, but like everyone was thinking about her as a mad person. I like this German look, like let's do not provoke such persons. That's why I do not want to provoke Russia as a society in general. Maybe do not want to help Ukraine or Georgia or any other country or Moldova in 90s, to not push Russian society as they will think that NATO is aggressor. Yeah, so let's spend some time and maybe this madness disappear. And maybe if we send Linkin Park to Moscow, and people in Moscow will look like on us as a normal persons, they, as a society, after some time, will not think about influences around the world and everything. They will be integrated in real world and do not think about next post Cold War separation and all of this shit. Yeah, but it didn't work, unfortunately. So as it's not working, we need to. I will go back to think about how many resources NATO, Western countries, together with Ukraine, can put in front of Russia. Like we can show to them that we are strong enough, but and that will be pretty clear for Russia to not continue the war. But as we have doubts or this vacuum, Russians will take what we allow them to take, and that's it. That's pretty clear for Russians. That what they are, where they are not mad, they understand the force clearly. But sometimes Western countries can be scared to forcibly push. Okay, I'm out of English. It's hard for me to explain what I mean. Sorry about that. But,
well, they are scared
but
they are scared. Sometimes I feel like they are scared of Russia's defeat more than they are scared of the threat of the Russian victory, right? So they kind of, I don't know to what extent they actually believe it or to what extent they pretend to believe it, but they seem to worry about the uncertainty of Russia falling apart, right? So the kind of lack of clarity about what would happen in that case. But they also seem to forget that, like, in a way, when the USSR fell apart, that was quite similar, right? And it was even bigger at the time, and there was no end of the world, like nothing like catastrophic of a global scale happens. Like the Earth was not ruined from that, and so it's. I feel like it's quite silly to be scared of that more than of a genocide that's happening. But it's hard to convince people of that. And sometimes it feels like, with like some Western politicians, it feels like they're like a broken record because they repeat the same things that make no sense whatsoever again and again and again. And then some of them sometimes will have like, they seem like they have a moment of clarity for like a week or two, and then they go back to how they were before. And it's just really, yeah, it's really irritating. But I think that if people knew, like, especially the ones who think that supporting Ukraine costs a lot, like, if they knew how much it's gonna cost them if they don't support Ukraine enough, um, any financial contribution they're making right now would seem like a bargain. And even though, like, it shouldn't even be talked about in that in this way, right? It shouldn't be some kind of so it's like stopping a genocide should not be some kind of haggling or transactional thing, but it's just a narrative that comes up a lot, right? Oh, Ukraine is costing so much. Like, Ukraine is barely costing anything compared to Ukraine's defeat, as scary as it sounds to say it, as you know, that's as much as it would cost, even in the economic sense, to some countries, to a lot
Yeah,
of
and
countries
it's not
actually.
like a static option, Alona, that
Say again?
Ukraine can hold forever, till as long as it takes. Because, I will open a secret. Ukrainians are not immortal and are not endless. And this fire, which Ukrainian soldiers like hold with their bodies on the front line, uh, it's not something that we can like take for centuries, because there is a statistic from 1991. Ukraine population was 50 million people, and for 25 years it's decreased to 40 million, and we think maybe, okay, that will stuck on this level. We will be 40 million country, and it's not a big deal, and not the poorest one, anyway. But after war, we lost a million, 10 million people who are refugees right now, who will not come back to Ukraine. Many people. So we right now maybe will be a country with less on 10 million people, and then if war continues, you get less and less and less. So maybe I don't know. I hope it will never happen, but maybe after 5 years of such local war conflict, Ukraine population will be 20 million, and the world, when in the United States it's hundreds of million people, and European Union half of a billion, they will like hope that this small country, it was a big country, but right now Ukraine is a small country. The small country will hold the front line and um, responses, and try to stop any war, uh, and stop Russia. It's maybe too much for Ukraine. Yeah, when we have countries with big populations, and these countries do not fight, and these countries like Poland, they get the richest people from Ukraine because they were refugees, and these countries, I respect to Poland, what they did, but these countries, they didn't get even tight think of the problems what they might have. They even get benefits, and they smuggling, know it. Uh, they warning.
Whining,
Oh, oh,
whining, know it.
they whining. Yeah, they whining like I do today too much. But they whining like they have some kind of a problem because of the war, because they like, should send some money. It's so unbelievably small thing. So I wonder, maybe these countries will get grow and stop to be kids. And what you said about the background of the history, that they think always had sentiment to Russia. Maybe it stopped to grow up a little bit and do not behave like a kid when Ukrainians get white head, you know, and become not just like dead inside, but absolutely, absolutely, uh, mm, mentally sick, and thinking. And atmosphere sometimes in Ukraine, you maybe not feel it absolutely if you go to Kiev city center, but I honestly sometimes feel like I'm on a funeral. Like many people get dead daily, and this how we live right now without almost any hope for the future, especially when we heard the phrase "as long as it takes" or "war in 6 years," war I don't know in 30 years, what it will be. People who are on age, boys who are on age less than 17, they can leave the country. So probably mothers of these school boys, they get them and move to another country. Why? Because of rockets, not because they know that their fate is to go to the front line. Um, I'm actually a pretty negative person and talk about problems. I'm TA, that's why maybe. But at least that we may have many problems, and Ukraine can't hold the war on their territory in future for ages. It's not possible. Country get less and less and less. That's my point. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your point, Stas. We got the new speaker, Mao. Do you have a question or you want to join the conversation with us?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good.
Привіт, доброго вечора. Мене звуть Mauricio, and I think that's all of my fluent Ukrainian for now. Yeah, I just had a comment for the topic that you mentioned about most of the studies of Eastern Europe or Slavic countries dominated by Russians. I just remembered a video that I think Anastasia Klimasha, one of the people I follow here, she put a video that she was in a library, and she went to the section of Slavic studies. I think, I don't know if it's a bad term, but basically there was like 10 corridors of Slavic studies, and she actually was she made like a perfect summary of what the problem is, that out of, I don't know, 10 corridors, 8 were about Russia, and then all of the other countries were just for the remaining corridors. So even on top of being dominated by Russians, unfortunately, I think one of the problems also it was that foreigners are obsessed with Russia and and think that you need to only study Russia to study Eastern Europe. And that's it.
It's a very common problem that the history of Russia and Ukraine and pretty much every country neighboring Russia is studied through the lens of Russians for some reason. It really doesn't make any sense when you think of it, because if you are going to try and not like foster or encourage Russia's imperialism, then you should study the history through the lens of the oppressed countries, right? Like, to me it seems like an obvious point, but
Yeah.
it's not as obvious to, I don't know, let's say British people, I guess, for example, and it kind of plays into like there are still like remains of that of their own imperial thinking, right? There is still some kind of processing happening, and so I feel like a lot of the time, like people from countries that used to be like empires and that used to be colonizers, they kind of, in a way, sometimes I feel like they almost kind of can relate to the Russian arrogance, right? Maybe that's not fair. I don't know. I'm not sure. But sometimes I feel like they're cautious to they try not to judge Russia too harshly because maybe, I don't know, they feel like that country has been like that in the past or similar to that. I'm not sure. So yeah.
Thanks.
Well, also, I would like to add that when we look on the history, that it looks from the Russia lens. Right now, all the media, all the big medias, start inviting like Russian correspondents to say something about Ukraine. So they continue, like the West continue doing the same thing, like looking at Ukraine through the Russian eyes. And for something that Stas was saying before from the beginning, I feel like something that me and you, Alona, was talking about like recently, that all those articles that come out like last week, it's like a big like psyop for like Western world, and it's so big and it's so different from the different sides like New York Post, Economist, Spiegel, like Bild. Like I don't know why people still listen to Ryobke, to be honest with you. But I heard people in Ukraine were talking about this article that he posted, that what it was about, that Scholz and Biden is trying to convince Zelensky to start talking to Russia or something. Like I just like, yeah, that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you to our space to explain a little bit about the media literacy and how to navigate in all this like different psyops and media operations.
That is such a great question, but I'm just gonna need to get myself a glass of water. So if anybody wants to to chat for the next couple of minutes, I'll be grateful.
Does anybody have anything to add? Like you can request the microphone.
Okay, I
Sam will
think
be
I'm
back
fine.
soon. Okay. Okay.
Unless like somebody wants to say something. And I see some of our guys in the audience, so please do feel free to join us. Can I be made a co-host again, by the way? So basically, Ukraine DAO is fact checking. That we've done a lot of work on that front. The front sounded wrong in this case. I'm sorry. And so it started when somebody on Twitter, well, there was like multiple people on Twitter asking Ukrainians about where to find accurate information about Ukraine, because there was lots of, like, especially in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there was absolute chaos was happening. And so there was a girl from Denmark. Her name was Cicely. She's amazing. She reached out to me with like some proposed like materials and websites, and I started telling her like which ones are okay and which ones are not and why. And we decided to start like a little group chat happening with her. And so very soon after that, the group chat kind of started expanding. And in the beginning, it was mostly like myself as a Ukrainian and mostly like Western people. And I remember then Cicely, she's amazing. Like this whole project wouldn't exist without her like in the beginning providing like huge amounts of support and she's like very perceptive to the views of Ukrainians. But in the beginning, I remember we laugh about it now. She was struggling to understand, like, why shouldn't we include Medusa on like a recommended list of media? And she genuinely, you know, she just genuinely couldn't get it. And I was like, Cicely, my dear, you know, like Medusa, it's like Russian. You know, that's all you need to know. It's just Russian bullshit. And she's like, no, but like it's, you know, it's balance, right? It should be, you know, there should be some semblance of balance. I was like, Cicely, no, that doesn't fuck balance. Like, we don't need to listen to Russians at all. Like, don't recommend this to anyone. And like, I'm grateful for her, you know. I'm grateful that she didn't like, I don't know, a lot of people get pissed off, a lot of like foreign people get pissed off if you tell them that something is bullshit, and they don't think it's bullshit. A lot of drama can happen as a result. But she was like very, you know, understanding. And so since then, we kind of we made it our understanding in the group that we just, you know, we don't need don't need any Russian media. There is no independent Russian media, so the thing. Like, Medusa is shit, like TV Rain is shit. Like, all of it is just different shades of shit, and we don't need, you know, any kind of imperial Russian input on this. And Stas wants to add something. Go on.
Yeah, you remind me about this station when I was talking with my colleague on the beginning of full scale invasion, and I sent to her Reuters article about like Russia will do fake elections, or it was entitled mentioned like separatists in Kherson, where there was already not separatists but invaders, clearly Russian invaders. They didn't hide and everything. And the Reuters posted this article, and then they changed the title, but in Twitter it saved. It was not updated, and we like had screenshots and sent to them, and I sent it to my colleague. Like, look what this shit is posting by Reuters, even responsible media. And she, and I didn't know. And the funniest thing was that I looked on my colleague LinkedIn, and she was working in Reuters before. But I didn't know it. So she was wondered. She said that she's sorry that such media can do shit like that. But you know, we were looking deeply on Reuters with the header or investor or someone related with Russia before the invasion, because they posted these cute videos from ballet in Moscow, or like Putin met with some kids. They did this stuff, and Ukrainian Twitter looked how they do it sometime from time to time. But after invasion, this article was like a really strange highlight for the Reuters. But even as with some reputation, medias can fuck up. Imagine how it's strange to use Russian sources like Medusa, because we are really can have problems with BBC or with Reuters. What you may think about the Medusa? They probably fucked up pretty early. We should not like even spend time to based on the source where we are not 100% sure that they are okay. That's the explanation to this girl you mentioned.
Yeah, Reuters have been absolutely awful, and they've been actually awful for years. Back in, I think it was in 2020, they announced an official partnership with TASS agency, which is like for the flagship Russian propaganda, like state news aid, so-called, well, fake news agency, right? And they were proud of it. It was like, what, 6 years into the invasion of Ukraine, and they were announcing a literal partnership with the Russian propaganda channel. It's crazy. And yeah, they afterwards, so after the full-scale invasion began, they kind of tried to distance themselves from TASS, but only on paper, right? So they said that okay, we are removing. They said something like, we are removing TASS from our content marketplace or something like that. But at the same time, they kept spreading Russian propaganda constantly. So they often, even now, they often quote TASS, and they just they don't do any kind of fact checking whatsoever. And I remember, like, a few days before the full scale invasion began, I posted this thread about how they republished something in the article that was just like literal Russian propaganda from TASS, and they did not. It was false information, and it was about like Ukraine allegedly trying to like the Ukraine allegedly blowing up the car of some Russian terrorist in Donbass, and because they didn't want to um, blow up the actual car, they replaced the they replaced the number plates. They put it on a cheaper car. Did the explosion, and then you could see that the number plate on on the guy's car was the guy himself. He was alive. It was the completely false flag operation, and so it's not something that is a matter of opinion, right? So it was clearly a fake story. And when Ukraine DAO kind of went big in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I had a lot of Reuters articles, Reuters journalists, reaching out to me, and I was so happy that I had an opportunity to ask them why they're so shit. Like, I was really like so delighted every time I got a message from a Reuters journalist. I was like, hello, I've been really looking forward to hearing from you, because as a reader, you reach out to them, they don't, or they just ignore you, right? But when they DM you because they want something to find out something from you, that's when they have nowhere, they they don't know what's about to happen or what I'm about to ask. So I would often be like, hi, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you, but like, can I ask you this question? And they kind of most of them, they would say, oh, you need to email this blah 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 blah, this editorial email or whatever. It's useless. Obviously, I didn't waste time on that because nothing's gonna change from it. And second, they will say, oh, things are more nuanced, and I'm like, how is it more nuanced? Like, it's literally a fake story. Like, it's verifiably fake. It's not nuanced at all, actually. And they would just ignore whatever concerns I would have. And so that's most journalists I spoke to. But there was one incident that like was really kind of it caught me off guard. It was when I was preparing to take part in this conference in Barcelona, and they set up the guys organizing the conference. They created a group chat with like myself and two people that they connected with me to like help with preparation and like PR or whatever. And so one of them, she was introduced to me, with great pride, with like, the person introducing her to me, they thought that they were going to impress me by saying she's a Reuters journalist. And like, to me, that's like the worst thing that you can say about someone, And I was like, oh, hello, you. And, I'm really happy that I didn't kick off at her immediately. Because because it was in a group chat, right? And it's about an event that I'm about to like attend. I didn't want to like completely, do a total car crash from the beginning. So I was like, I'm just going to argue with her in private, And so I messaged her separately, and I was like, listen, like, I need to talk to you, you know. And I'll have to be honest with you, like, I was gonna be a bitch. I wasn't, you know, I didn't message her in good faith. But the funniest thing is that once she called me, and I was like, I basically said to her, like, look, I heard you work at Reuters, and you know, I'm Ukrainian, and this and that, like, you know, the coverage has been really shit. And she reacted like in a completely unpredictable way for me. She was like, well, first of all, she hadn't actually worked there for the last few years, but she said, oh my god, Reuters is so fucking corrupt, it's horrible, you know. And she started saying to
Yeah.
me how, like, she didn't know anything about like Ukraine coverage being corrupt about Reuters, but apparently there is so much more that happening there, you know. And she started telling me about all the other corruption that's happening at Reuters, and that was, you know, that's just not what you are prepared. That's not what you expect to hear from from someone. And so, oh my god, she's amazing, you know. And we still talk from time to time with her, but that was like a really rare thing. And she said to me that like a lot of younger journalists, they know what's happening, but they will still go and work at Reuters because it kind of gives them a nice thing to put on their CV. So like if you worked at Reuters, then it's easier for you in the future to find a job. But that also means that like for a while, you end up almost inevitably like you compromise your integrity, you know, and it's not a nice thing to live with. So yeah, uh, in Ukraine, Reuters are not respected whatsoever. And like in terms of just media in general, it's been like increasingly, I don't know about you guys, but it's been increasingly more difficult for me to navigate what's happening with the media. Like I think in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I could recommend you so many different sources. Like a lot more, you know, lots of people who I thought were good turned out to be not so good, if that makes sense, you know. And it becomes harder and harder to like actually like recommend someone. I don't know if that's what you would say about it.
I pinned this new what they had. They say it in title. If you follow the link, it will open updated article title. But they write it like that: Russian backed separatists in Kherson. In Kherson, not in Donbass, when they used for Russian proxies this word separatist, which was wrong. But after even invasion, when Russians moved from Crimea with their forces and put some people with Ukrainian citizenship, like this guy in Kherson, they say it's a separatist Russian backend, and we like, what the fuck? In which world you are living, guys? Russian backend separatists. So Russia only support one guy with hundreds or thousands of troops and tanks, and the main actor is this guy. They put him, and
It's
they only
ridiculous, right?
absolutely. Oh, so it's really. I think here it was unprofessionality. Les incompetents. But that means that they really were so used to use this word separatist, or even I forgot how it's in English, like повстанцы,
Rebels, they also said.
rebels, yeah,
Yeah.
rebels. They so like this situation from 2014 till 22, with some kind of rebels instead of proxies, instead of Girkin, who is Russian citizen. And they still going on. They thought, oh, okay, maybe we can describe it like that even after full-scale invasion.
It's infuriating, and it was infuriating to me, like before the full-scale invasion, obviously, but afterwards, it's the, you know, it's so consistent, and they are so they get it wrong on such a regular basis that you start thinking like, guys, if you struggle so much to learn basic vocabulary about Ukraine and to understand what's acceptable to say about Ukraine and what's like Kremlin terminology, maybe you shouldn't be a journalist. Like maybe go and consider like an alternative career. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you know, whatever else you can do. Just don't write about Ukraine if you are not if you're so incompetent. Um, and sometimes, like I made a page that's called "How to Speak About Ukraine." It sounds very arrogant, probably the title, but it does the job. You know, it communicates what's contained on that page. And like sometimes before I speak to a journalist, I give them this page, and I'm like, dude, please just like when you write an article about Ukraine, just stick to this terminology. This is correct terminology about Ukraine. It's Ukraine centric. It's accurate. Please just use this. Like nothing for you to like to hesitate over, right? Just use these words. And they're like, sure, yeah. They always promise that they will do that. And every single time I then open the article and guess what they used? Ukraine crimes.
Rebels.
Ukraine is some Ukraine bullshit, you know? And I'm like, oh, like, what do I have to do for them to just like not get it wrong every time? I don't know. And it's like that for like pretty much all Western journalists. And we've also been joined by Daniel. Daniel, hello.
Hello, Preet. I was really listening with some interest about the part earlier where you mentioned how you felt that Westerners from former empires tend to kind of find the Russian arrogance relatable. And there's this thought that had kind of stuck in my mind about that for some time. And that is that, well, we had the political divisions in our societies as well. And where they really touch down on ground is on the values in practice. If you value power over your past empire, sounds like the glory days, and it's easy to start to glamorize Russia. And where does MAGA align? There you go. If you value people in a democratic society and you haven't studied Ukraine and you haven't been motivated and curious enough, and you're taking Western journalists at their word, it's easy to be weakly supportive or ambivalent. And all Russian propaganda has to do is insert enough doubt and use these terminologies and maybe even play a bit of a 60-40 game so that your guard is down, and then something that is damaging and false about Ukraine can pass. And some people will say, well, but this same source said something nice elsewhere, so they're probably telling the truth. Well, that's exactly how the 60-40 propaganda tactic works. So it really just matters about your curiosity and a willingness to adjust to information. Like if there's pushback from Ukrainians about something, who's investigating, who actually takes the new information into account, and who actually was interested to find out what Ukrainians generally were saying and what they felt was credible based on being close to what's happening. So I'll leave it there. But it really is showing people's colors how they line up on this.
Thank you, Daniel, for that. I totally agree with what he said. And yeah, Alona, also I wanted to ask you, like this book that you always recommend from Dmytro Kuleba. I'm pretty sure like not a lot of people know about that. Can you tell us a little bit about that book? Because I
Oh,
didn't read it myself yet, but I'm about to like order a PDF or something.
it's an amazing book, and it's by Dmytro Kuleba, who is Ukraine's foreign affairs minister. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to look up some tweets that I wrote about it. Like, I really want for someone to write a thread about that book. Maybe I will end up doing it, but it's called in Ukrainian it's called Війна за реальність. Як перемагати у світі фейків, правд та спільнот, something like that. Як перемагати у світі фейків, правд та спільнот. Так. And it basically describe it's kind of like it can be used as a reference book, but it also like it's a very easy to read nonfiction about how to navigate the interspace, and he gives like very useful tips that are based on his career as a diplomat and communicator, and he talks about what works in the info space and what doesn't work, and like just gives like very practical advice on how to not go mad, basically. I guess like his the five main tips that he gives is to think critically, to read the room, to basically to like sense the community, to rely on reality, right? So to assess the situation from what's really happening, and also to control your emotions. And the last tip that he gives is to interact with the state, and that's where like I've personally become like a little bit more skeptical about that. So it's like I'm only prepared to like interact with the states to an extent these days. But the other four tips, I find them great, and I feel like a lot of people like would benefit from reading the book. Maybe I'll end up like writing actually a big thread about it, because it's like the kind of knowledge that's there. It would be super useful for pretty much everyone. But like not everybody has the time to read these days, and so maybe if I just make a thread, people will like benefit from that or end up ordering the book as well. I don't know, but it's definitely like something that I recommend to everybody. I'll drop the title in the replies in a second.
Yeah, I remember you were giving me like a little quote from this book about disinformation and the source, that you need to find the source, not the disinformation.
Yeah, that's something that that is like it's become like a thing in my life. Like I get really annoying telling people to like unfollow stuff, and sometimes sometimes people just my friends that are used to me, they're like, okay, Alona tells me to unfollow something, I'm just unfollowing it, I'm not even gonna get into this argument, like they're sick and tired of me probably by now. But some people get defensive and they're like, what, like I like this account, like why do you not like it, and you start explaining to them that this account spreads disinformation, and because it does it regularly, like you shouldn't be following it. And they're like, no, but this account also posts my favorite videos of like, I don't know, grizzly bears or whatever, like unicorns, I don't care what it is, but they post such cute videos of blah, 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 blah. And you try to explain to them again that the cute videos or the videos that you like, they are there on purpose so that you keep coming back to this page, right? And then they also like interject some nonsense in there and mixed up with like cute videos or whatever, or mixed up with like credible info, like that makes it really dangerous, because you're not able to pick up on on this info, because you're not as cautious as you would otherwise be. And so right now, like the most dangerous kind of Russian propaganda is the one that is not obvious, right? So it doesn't necessarily look like Russia today. It's not like very often like Russian disinformation people, they present themselves as pro-Ukrainian, right? So if you go to, I don't know, let's say Kyiv Post, which is a super discredited newspaper by now, and it's been like that since at least like late 2021. uh, you will probably confuse them with like a pro-Ukraine publication. But if you kind of follow it for a longer time, or if you like keep track of it, right, you will see some really bizarre stuff in there, like very regularly actually. But you know it's quite cleverly disguised, and so it's very hard sometimes to for a foreign person, especially, to pick up on what's wrong there. um, and there is a lot of stuff like that happening. And so once you see someone like spreading inaccurate information, make a mental note, or even better, like make it more public and ask other people if they've seen something weird about that account, media, and so on. And maybe somebody like will tell you, and we can always help as well. Tatiana and I, we've become like uh, we watch everything we can on Twitter, and then like and beyond. And so like we all always we already have like a database with accounts and journalists that have less integrity than others. And so we kind of try to build up like a shared knowledge bank, so that people can save time, and like just you look up things in the database. But yeah, Kuleba's book is great because it kind of saves a lot of time explaining things that I always like. I tried to explain similar stuff to people before, but I couldn't like word it as well as he has. And so one of the tips that he gives is like, be very strict about who you follow, and maintain like info hygiene. So don't it's better to follow fewer accounts but with good info, rather than follow like, I don't know, 1,000 accounts about Ukraine, and half of them or even more are just spreading nonsense.
Yeah, thank you about that. Also, we will be wrapping up pretty soon, like in 15 minutes. If somebody has any questions, please send me a request and I will add you as a speaker. Also, like I wanted to add one remark about one of the things that is pissing me off the most in the coverage of the Western media about pretty much anything, not only about Ukraine. It's those anonymous sources. I cannot stand it. Like, well, but who said it? Like, if you cannot show me the video, or I don't know, like the speech of this person, why I have to believe you that you found this anonymous source who shared some really important information with you?
And that anonymous source almost inevitably turns out to be the fucking Arestovich as well, you know,
I
all
know.
the
And
time.
well, one of the things that like I'm like laughing so much right now after like finally people find out who Arestovich actually is, because for people who was following up Ukraine for longer than 2 years, uh, I think I found out about him somewhere like in 2016 or something. And it was like really great stream with one of the Ukrainian like young philosophers. And they have like a bottle or something about like different things, like when Arestovich was trying to say that like about his project, this Ukraine Rus, that we need to take Russian language because it's Ukrainian language, like all the bullshit that he said all the time. What and it was the first time when I saw the Arestovich, and I kind of understood what kind of person it is. And for me, it was like really hard to explain for like, for example, for my uncle in Los Angeles who was listening to Fagin and Arestovich. I was trying like, don't listen to that, like, please don't. And well, yeah, he not listening to him anymore. But right now, I see that a lot of Russians is coming back. Not only Russians, like other like Ukrainian journalists who was working for Russia. for Medvedchuk and so on. They coming back in Ukraine again, and they have their YouTube channels. They are present on the marathon, and it's like kind of bothering me a lot too. And I think the one of the things that people cannot understand that we have this massive like Russian propaganda inside Ukraine. That's why, and we kind of know how to navigate it. And when we see something like that in the Western media, we start calling it out, and people don't believe us. But like when it comes to the Russian propaganda, like please believe Ukrainians. We know how to deal with this stuff.
That's so true. And like, I think one of the most problematic ones recently was that article by Simon Schuster. That was his name, right? And like he's literally he's a Russian. His name is like Simeon, and he managed to like managed his way into like like even the president's office, speaking to interviewing the president, like covering Ukraine a lot from Ukraine, and then he ended up writing some really like I guess favorable articles about Ukraine in the past, but then all of a sudden at the worst moment imaginable he starts like really undermining us in a really sinister way as well. So the way he did it was a like anonymous sources, but also he manipulated on the subjects that it was very hard to prove that it was wrong what he said, or the you know it wasn't accurate, because the claims that were made in the article, they actually had some grounding in like in the reality, right? So you could not say, oh, it's completely fake, it's completely false. um but it was like the way it was framed, the story, the way it was, the timing of it as well. And just like as a journalist, you don't just like report facts, well, most of the time, right? There is like a storyline that like there is some kind of argument that you usually make without like the article, right? And so the way you like craft the story, it matters a lot. So you can present the same information, like the same objective facts. You can, depending on like what your intention is and what publication you work for and so on, and the political views that you have as a journalist and as a human being, they all of that affects how the story comes out, right? And so the way he presented it was very damaging to Ukraine, and it was hard for us to disprove it, because okay, people would say to us, well, but it's not wrong, but he says it's, you know, it's completely like realistic. And yeah, it was realistic, but like from his previous negative coverage, like inaccurate coverage, right? And like the fact that he's Russian, and just like the way the things that he tweeted back in the day, but nobody was paying attention and stuff, it was very clear to see that he wasn't like he was doing it on purpose. But it was super hard to explain it to foreigners, because again, like sometimes there are nuanced things that are very hard to communicate, and you can just sense that this is wrong as a Ukrainian person. Like you've developed like I don't know, some kind of intuition for some bullshit detector. But it's very hard sometimes to explain that experience or explain that feeling that you have to a person who is looking at the same text, and they don't see the same thing as you do.
Well, especially with this article that you mentioned, it actually was obvious because, again, if you following what's going on, it was the same narrative that Russians tried to do last year, and they failed. And that's why they try to do that again this time with like more powers from the different sides. I will say maybe starting from this article, all those articles starts like piling up with like really questionable coverage from the Politico, from Economist, from New York Times, and so on and so on. And what do I want to say? Yeah, and like the interesting thing about Russian propaganda, how they're trying to work with Ukrainian public and the Western public, it's always the same thing. Like they just trying it over and over again. Like they have their like mm, topics that they try in the West, and they think like first time they will try, maybe you won't see it, but they will try it a little bit later again, and then you will find out that like, oh, okay, I heard about that, so maybe it's true because it's coming up again. So in Ukraine, they have other topics to divide Ukrainians, like. And they trying it all over again all the time. Like for Ukrainian society, the biggest one of those topics that they bring it up, like probably I don't know, like every like 3 months or something about Crimea. Like it's like you can see that it's done on purpose, but a lot of people still uh taking a bait and trying to do like fighting about those topics.
Yeah, it's very true. And sometimes it's hard to tell what is, what's the psyop, what's a Russian psyop, and what's like a legitimate thing to discuss. Because some things are also like they're very difficult to not react to them. And so you just end up like no matter how much you want to like avoid taking part in another srach, you still get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like in the end of our space, can you please share maybe some DAO website and things? I will put it also like in our description on YouTube and a podcast so people can go see, because we actually have a big database about like really different things, like about the culture, about like you will find like different books there, you will find different links for different movies. Also you will find the um, materials that Alona was working on, like cybersecurity, on the media literacy and stuff like that.
Yep, I'm just gonna find our link tree. So, like, you can always like look up. You can always in our account. You can always find the link to link tree. It's in the Twitter bio, and then from there you always can find all of our like social networks. But well, most of the community and most of the info is in our Discord and in Notion as well. But like in on Discord, you can actually like talk to people and stuff. And so a lot of channels there are like not visible. A lot of like the internal ones are private, and so you can like, but also the like the most I guess informative ones obviously open, and so you can always come to our Discord and like chat to us, and you can always like if you ever lose any link, you can not, or you need to like confirm if some page is actually our page, you can check that through like cross-referencing with Linktree. Sorry, one second, I'm just pulling it up now. But yeah, we've got a lot of different stuff. We've accumulated like things on very different subjects over time. Okay, I'll drop the link.
Awesome. Thank you. And also thank you for coming for our space today. We decided to do like those spaces on Saturdays, not only about updates because they're really quick usually, but also invite people that be interested to talk with. So if somebody have any ideas who you want to talk to next Saturday, you always can write it down, comment, um, send us DMs and stuff, and we'll try to reach out to those people. But for next Saturday, we have a special guest already. He's an audience, and I think it will be one of the really interesting spaces. Like we will have space with Daniel.
Oh my god, that would be great. That would be amazing. I'm gonna
Yeah.
prepare lots of questions, Daniel.
Well, yes, with Daniel, I think we'll be talking more about culture, about translations and things like that, and how he started learning about Ukraine, being just the man from Texas, like to be
I
honest,
Daniel
because
give like
that,
Ukraine.
yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening, and
I the link tree
as
as
I
well.
said, yeah, thank you. All the links, we have a link tree also in our bio, our bio. You can find our YouTube, our other social media, and pretty much all the spaces, and also our open sessions. And we are posting on our YouTube. For people who doesn't know, open session we have it every week with our Ukrainian students who speak in English about different topics, and it's really interesting to hear what they think about them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.